1, 2. My name is DJ Jazzy Jeff.
He's perhaps the most recognizable DJ in the world.
You just can't stand still. There's nothing good that comes out of standing still.
He's been doing it for years and still inspiring people to just keep going.
When you won the Grammy, you had $500.
100%.
Everybody knew you guys at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You had $500.
I had $500 in my account.
But through his career, he found out that fame and fortune, they can be really different things.
The one thing that never changed was the love of music.
And that passion defines today's guest, DJ Jazzy Jeff, Philly's own.
Listen, this is my home.
Welcome back to The Pulse. You know how we do every week, bringing in people, telling their stories, sharing experiences, inspiring, and we get to do that again this week, but it's special because I'm from Philly. We're in Philly. We've got DJ Jazzy Jeff in the building. How are you, sir?
I am beautiful. I am beautiful.
We appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So I was talking before, and I was trying to figure out, talking to everybody in the room before you got here, about you ask anybody on earth. No, seriously, if you think about it, their top 5 DJs or people that they would know or what have you. And I think you're in everybody's top 5. That's got to be like, what does that feel like? That's not even boasting. You're like, if you ask people, you're one of the 5 that they can name and have respect for.
I don't think I allow myself to feel that.
Okay.
It's definitely flattering. It's definitely, an honor. But I think I have always had this weird, I don't know if I would call it a superstition, that I try not to pay a lot of attention to any of the accolades because I felt like as soon as you do that, it's over. And I feel like hopefully I'll have enough time in my older age to really sit back and reflect. But I nod, thank you, and I move on.
People know you. Like they know you from various different things.
Yeah. Most people know me from the TV show.
Okay.
Television is a lot more polarizing than music. And I learned that, during the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. What I tell people is during the DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, we had music fans. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is 80-year-old white grandmothers. Okay. Like it's a whole different demographic that, in the early 90s, going to the mall, you only had to worry about people who knew you for your music, that saw you in music videos. Yeah. Later on in the 90s, it was everybody because of the television show. I used to fight the people that just knew me for the television show because, I started off as a DJ and then a producer and then in a group, and it was more about the music part that I wanted people to know me for. Kenny Gamble is like a big brother to me, has always given me advice. And I remember Kenny pulling me aside because I was actually complaining about the TV show. Like, this is great, but this isn't what I want to do. And he said, Jeff, you cannot fight the reasons why people know you. And, the day that he said that to me, I embraced it. More than I did before.
I never thought of it that way because I'm from Philly. So I remember, the late 80s and 90s and the music. And I would think, like, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was an offshoot of the career, I thought, like the music. So it's interesting for me to hear that took you to a whole nother level that even you weren't used to.
Well, when you really think about it, us having the ability to sell 3 million records, it might have been 30 million people watching the episode of the show.
Okay.
So, looking at it in those numbers, it was breathtaking to really understand that all of these people knew you. I remember my wife and I were on a vacation in Jamaica, and we were sitting at a pool, and there was a couple in the pool that had no idea who I was, and we were talking, and she asked my wife, what does your husband do? And she said, he's a DJ. And she said, like Jazzy Jeff? And we just kind of shot a look at each other.
Everybody on earth, as I said.
Hey, what's up, Jay?
It seems like you've been somebody who didn't necessarily crave the attention.
No.
Like early on, it seemed like you were about the music, doing all of that, and the DJ. You did the show, but you even seemed reluctant on the show.
I was.
You know, is that a fair assessment? Like, I mean, to be this well known, 30 million people watching the show, millions of albums, you don't seem like you crave it.
I crave the art.
Okay.
I am somebody that I understand how much of a blessing it is to do something that you really love to do. I used to do little things. I used to live on Pier 5, and I would wait until a extremely cold day in December, and I would get in my car at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would drive down Chestnut Street, and I would watch people that were waiting for the bus. So you driving down Chestnut Street, you get a chance to see how far the bus is. And I'm realizing it's 10 degrees outside and the bus is 25 blocks away. So you have to wait out here. And I would always say, these are people a lot of times that are going to a job that they do not enjoy. And that made me really appreciate what I was doing, that, you know, I was fortunate enough to find my niche of what I wanted to do very early on in life. I never had a plan B. There was never a doubt in my mind. There was never, if this doesn't work, you're going to do this. No, this is going to work because this is my destiny. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Even then, when you were doing block parties and, you know, graduations and parties, was this plan A?
No, okay. Not at all. You know what's funny? You don't know the destination. I just knew, you know, I equated it like I was in the woods and I'm walking. I don't know exactly where I'm going, but I feel in my heart that I'm going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. You know, and what I did realize is nothing is going to happen, and I'm not going to find what's on the other side of this forest by standing still. You gotta walk. You just can't stand still. There's nothing good that comes out of standing still.
And obviously, you know, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, but music, Soul Child, Jill Scott, Eminem, like you could go on forever. You've worked with those big names. Mm-hmm. One of the guys that I know is Christian Crosby.
Yeah.
And I mention him because you've also worked with people who are just into the art themselves and trying to become the next big name. Mm-hmm. You must love it. You know, if you're still doing it, even when people aren't as aware of what you're doing on some of those types of projects.
Every time you make a song, you're giving birth, and you don't know how that child is going to grow up. Summertime grew up to be an amazing child.
Okay.
You don't know how they're going to happen. So I enjoy, and this is going to sound funny, I enjoyed working with Jill more than I enjoyed working with Will later on in the career. Because Will is a guarantee. It's like you would watch people say, I'm trying to get this song to Beyonce. Beyonce's already Beyonce.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You're
like,
trying to help create the next Beyonce.
If you give Beyonce a hit record, they're going to say it's Beyonce. Beyonce was already a hit. But if you give Christian Crosby a hit record, now it's a collaborative thing. Wow, you know, Jeff and Christian really created.
I was reading some things, behind the scenes stuff, and tell me if some of this stuff is true. Mm-hmm. You won a Grammy, for parents who don't understand. When you won the Grammy, you had $500.
100%.
That's a true story.
That is.
So this is millions of like people. Everybody knew you guys at that point. Mm-hmm. You had $500.
I had $500 in my account.
How I ask that because we've had a lot of people sitting here across from us, and there's a lot of those types of stories. How does that even happen?
Santa Claus is not real. The expectations and the things that you thought about the music industry were nothing compared to what it actually was. You know, there was a point in time that I remember Will and I saying, if we ever sell 1 million records, we will never be broke. And we were extremely wrong. And those are things that you don't find out until you're in it. And I think going back to your earlier question, that's one of the reasons that I fell back in love with the creation process, because through all of the success and the letdowns that you finally realized that Santa Claus wasn't real. The one thing that never changed was the love of music. Because if you're doing it for the accolades, you're going to find out that it's not, everything that glitters isn't gold. Fame does not equate to fortune. And that is the one thing that, what I express to people is getting into the music industry, there are two sides of it. There's the fame side and there's the fortune side. There's a lot of people that go after the fame side thinking that they're one and the same, and it's not the case. That you can be extremely famous, like I was, and the fortune doesn't really match. There are a lot of people that have a lot of fortune and you have no idea who they are.
The kids all across the land, there's no need to argue, parents just don't understand.
I've always said that I feel like we are the first generation that's growing old with hip hop. And we're trying to figure out what to do with it. The next generation is going to have it a lot better. But, coming up, it was presented that hip hop was the music of the youth. So what happens when the youth get older?
Youth are 50.
Do you just let it go? And I've always looked at it like, if my mom rocked with the Temptations and still rock with the Temptations, why can't we still rock with Jay-Z? Why can't we still rock with Run DMC? It's just, like I said, us being the first generation that's getting older with hip hop, we're trying to find our way.
You're doing a residency. That to me is interesting. Like, you talk about the growth of hip hop. You're doing a residency here, Philadelphia, Rivers Casino, doing it every couple months or quarterly. But a hip hop DJ producer, to have a residency even seems like that represents growth.
Now realize that some of these people are in their late 40s, early 50s. They still like music. They still want to dance. They still want to have a good time. And instead of trying to satisfy my kids, I'd rather satisfy my peers. And I think what started to happen, and I really understood, when the pandemic hit and people started streaming online, I realized that most of the people that were streaming were older. All of the young DJs that I knew were saying, I can't wait until outside opens back up. Most of the grown folk that I knew were kind of like, I don't really like the death and all of this stuff, but I'm not really that mad by staying in the house. And I think
real.
that thing just kept carrying on. I joke and I said that the pandemic woke grown folk up. That it was kind of like, we still like to have a good time. We still like to listen to music, So I think, a residency like at Rivers is bringing out a lot of the people that were kind of like, man, I missed this.
You still want to have a good time, but you don't want to go and you're not really sure how this is going to turn out and how people are going to be acting in the club. Like, I can go enjoy the music I like, but do grown folks stuff.
Listen, I'm working on an album with Rakim now.
Okay.
And we started this project during the pandemic. And we were sitting outside of the studio. And I asked, I said, do you go to clubs? And he looked at me and kind of laughed, because he kind of knew where I was going. And he was like, no, I don't go to clubs. Rakim cuts his grass and plants tomato trees, And I said, so why are we going in the studio trying to make club music? And he looked at me. I said, we go out to dinner. We go see shows. We go on vacations. We still like to go out and dance, but it's our lives aren't circled around a club experience like they were when we were in our 20s. It's kind of like, why don't we make music for the people who like to do what we like to do?
So the response so far to the residency has been great.
Yes,
people are enjoying
absolutely.
themselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, just going out having a party. The next one is
the day before Thanksgiving, which is
okay.
And that's another thing. If you grew up in Philadelphia, you kind of understand that the day before Thanksgiving and Black Friday night are very big party nights in Philadelphia. So I really enjoy, because this is hey, we're going to go out, we're going to have a good time, and we're going to sit
all your
and
people
take our
are back in
shoes off.
town.
Yep. take our shoes off and we gonna eat some good food on Thanksgiving.
30-something. 30-something. Since we like did a show, like damn.
Jab, 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 uppercut, jab. Get them a steak slab and put them in a cab. Watch them drop. DJ Jazzy Jeff.
I'm not going backwards talking about things with Will and things that you may have experienced. The question I do have, though, is that that's your real friend.
100%.
So when that's your real friend and the world's talking about them, and most of the time the world doesn't know that person. They know what they saw. How, like, that's got to be a hard thing to handle, or is that just, you know, like with anybody's real friend?
I don't know anyone who has walked a straighter line than him. And when the incident happened, you know, I was one of the first people to reach out to him. And it was just kind of like, you're human. I think everybody in the world has done stuff that they regret. It's just a little bit unfortunate when it's done in the public's eyesight. You know, I was one of those people that I was kind of like, I think, you know, every black family has a Bobby Brown and a Whitney Houston in the family. That was not unusual for us to see. It was unusual for the world to see. But that's most people's aunt and uncle.
And back in the day, you let them go around the corner and they handled it.
That's it.
The difference was
Yes.
like, only the people who were at the party know that they handled it. And you're like, man, let them go outside and handle their difference.
And this was in front of the world.
Yeah.
And that was the difference. This wasn't something that was shocking. Oh my God, this is kind of like, you know, we always fight with our brothers, you know, and, you know, Will and Chris have been tight for a long time. We always fight with our brothers.
I saw a response that you said when you were talking about the book that Will wrote and went around the world and was a bestseller. And without going into the book, people just read the book if you want the details of the book, still available. But I saw you interviewed and you were like, man, I ain't writing a book. Like I'm not putting on.
We Will brought all of us to Miami for a book reading before the book came out, because he wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable of what he had in the book. And me sitting there listening to him read this book, I didn't even hear him read the whole book. I only heard him read a couple of the chapters. That I went to my room and I said, I'm never writing a book. That was a level of tapping into yourself that I don't know about. Will and I have been friends for 40 years. And there was things in that book that I didn't know. So to understand, he stripped away a lot of the armor to get to the real meat and potatoes to tell that story that I don't know if I want to strip my armor away.
Yeah, and let everybody in to your personal life.
I'm not even thinking about everybody else. There's things that I don't want to look at, let alone for the rest of the world to look at. And it's not like it's, you know, it's something bad. It's just sometimes you move away from things. You grow and you know, okay, this happened and I'm going to put this to the side. To, you know, I have a job to do. I have a goal to reach that I don't really look at those steps. And he did.
We end every show on The Pulse with the concept of use your voice for good. We ask people what that means to them.
I believe people should do whatever they can to find their passion. If you're living and you want to live the best life that you possibly can, find what makes you happy, regardless of what anyone else says, regardless what anyone else thinks. You know, I am very firm in finding your passion. Your passion doesn't have to mean it's going to make you the most money, make you the most successful. You have to find what makes you happy, first and foremost.
Good. And you can have $500 in your account and win a Grammy.
That's right. Don't take that path.
Yeah. Look, it worked out.
Yeah, it did.
It played out for you. I appreciate you doing this. Like, this was fun. I wish you continued success. And we'll have you back whenever you're around. Come on in. Stop. You got a home at the Pulse.
Listen, this is my home.
Thank you so much for watching The Pulse. I feel like we should have turntables or something to be like, he's Jazzy. His name is Jeff. It was a great conversation with him. I enjoyed him spending some time just having fun, but also providing insight on several things that I may not have been aware of, and perhaps you weren't as well. If you would like to hear the entire interview, you can always get it. All places where podcasts are available, just subscribe and you'll get the notification. Any feedback you have, hit me up on social media at BillAFox29. And I leave you as I always do, reminding you that whenever you can, use your voice for good and have a good one.